When clients get approved for more than they anticipated, how do you help them determine what they should realistically borrow rather than what they can qualify for?
Yeah, it's a great question. And you're absolutely right. Like, when rates bottomed out, people were qualifying for, often clients would be surprised at what their pre-approved amount was. And, everybody's a little bit different in terms of, what their goals are for home buying. But I think the budget comes into play here as well to take a look at, yes, you could max out, and borrow more than maybe you thought you would, but how is that going to impact, your day-to-day life? There are a lot of expenses that we all have that are not factored into a mortgage application. Car insurance, daycare, lifestyle and hobbies. We all have a number of expenses that really aren't captured in what we call the debt ratio calculation when lenders are qualifying you for a mortgage. And so, yes, you may be able to max out, but what are you going to give up for that, maximum home purchase price or maximum amount? Now, the market that you're in, I think comes into play a little bit here. I think the reality of some of the larger cities across the country, to get into a home or to buy that home, maybe you are leaning towards sort of the max side. But again, it's a conversation to take a look at your life and your budget and your income and say, where am I at professionally? Do I expect a raise in the future? Well, yeah, maybe you're willing to take on a little bit more of a short-term, larger mortgage amount because you're going to have some more income in the future. So there's a lot of stuff that comes into play. And I just think it takes a little bit of, self-inflection to say, okay, am I, comfortable with, say, a $4,000 a month mortgage payment, or would I just prefer 3,000 and have that extra $1,000 a month for everything else that my life has, all the other expenses in my life, right?
Yeah, I've rarely seen somebody do that. So you have lots of discipline if you can. In a lot of cases, have you seen people say, okay, my payment's 6,000, I'm making 15,000 as a household, so this is totally fine. But then they don't factor in things like the land transfer tax, the realtor fees, the home inspections and things like that. Are you seeing, not hidden costs, but sort of unexpected costs impact their decision?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, land transfer tax is obviously a big one. So that's one of the, pre-planning things we do when we go through a pre-approval is it's one thing to say you're pre-approved for X, this is what the payment is. When you buy that home, here are the costs. So this is what you need to have over and above the mortgage to be able to take possession of that home. And, it can be an eye opener. Where we see a lot of surprises is sort of in that brand new home space, primarily in condos where during the initial launch phase where they sell units and over the course of a few years while that project is being built, there may be additional costs that come up that are of course passed on to the purchasers. So fees and levies are something that come up quite often and can be a surprise on closing. But yeah, that's all part of the planning. So if you're sitting down and you've got a mortgage approval, the conversation shouldn't stop there. It should be walking you through, okay, here's where things go from here. You find a home, you make an offer. Do you have the money liquid for the deposit? Here's how much extra you're going to need to actually get the keys on closing day. And then, of course, you don't want to move into your new home and have $0 in your bank account. You want to, maybe do some upgrades to the home, maybe buy some furniture. Life still goes on regardless of how much money you borrow on your mortgage. And so you want to make sure you've got, I think, in the investment industry, everybody talks about, having 6 months of expenses set aside, right? As some savings.
Yep. Yeah. It's having that cash on hand makes a lot of sense. Sometimes I just see people holding on to it and saying, I'll never spend it. But really, this is an emergency. It would qualify for something where I'd say, consider dipping into it as long as you can repay it responsibly.
Right. Right.
Now, a lot of people, when they do get pre-approved, they'll say, Harry, send me everything I got. And it puts them behind on their investing journey. They might have a ton of money into their house, but it impacts the liquid cash they could have in retirement. So, if somebody said, Harry, I got pre-approved for a little bit more, what do you think? Let's take a look at the financial plan first. But you'd be pretty happy in most cases saying I have excess cash every month instead of saying, oh man, Harry, I need you to send me $1,000 a month, because I overbought. So
totally.
Really, again, here, have the conversation, look at the plan and just do the math, making sure it makes sense for you.
Yeah, for sure.